welcome to the deep dive. Our source material today takes us to, well, one of the most idyllic settings you can imagine. A high-end ski resort, Crans-Montana in Switzerland, celebrating New Year's Day.
Place of celebration.
Exactly. And this deep dive is focused on what happened inside a packed bar, right in the early hours of that celebration.
Yeah.
We're looking at a scene of, vibrant, carefree revelry that, within moments, became one of the deadliest peacetime disasters in Swiss history.
It's staggering.
A devastating fire left at least 40 people dead, dozens more injured. And that scale of human loss is already it's hard to comprehend. But the real importance of this for our investigation lies in what the experts are saying.
That's right. Because when a tragedy like this strikes, we often look for a freak accident, some unknowable force. But our sources confirm that experts immediately, and I mean unequivocally, labeled this as avoidable. It wasn't just bad luck, it was a predictable outcome of really systemic failure.
Which brings us to our mission then. We need to move past the headline and dissect why. Why was this avoidable? We're going to unpack the design flaws, the management negligence, and the specific egregious safety code violations that are now part of a nationwide investigation in Switzerland.
We want to understand the mechanics that turned a party into a death trap.
Yes.
We need to identify those foundational safety sins because, as we're going to discuss, these issues are not unique to Crans-Montana.
Okay, let's unpack this. What stands out first, to me at least, is not the ignition itself, but just the sheer unforgiving speed of the event.
The speed, yes.
When fire safety analysts study this, that concept of time is it's central. The finding is that the blaze may have accelerated from manageable to lethal in, seconds?
Within seconds. That window for a safe escape, the time you need to even register the danger and start moving, it just disappeared instantaneously. And that speed is the critical factor. It's what separates a large fire from a mass casualty event. We always hear that speed is the killer, but you have to understand the mechanism behind it. The visual evidence, especially from survivor accounts and, videos shared on social media.
I've seen some of them.
They show flames just racing across the ceiling.
Right.
This isn't fire climbing a wall. This is a surface spread that is incredibly rapid, covering the entire venue, right above the crowd's heads almost instantly.
So the ceiling wasn't just burning.
Yeah.
It was acting like a giant fuse, a conduit for the fire.
Exactly. It was a fuel. And that means the fire load, which is the total potential energy of all the flammable stuff in the room, from decorations to furniture, was clearly excessive.
Okay.
And when a fire accelerates that fast, it's generating smoke from all these modern synthetic materials. This is not harmless wood smoke. The smoke is it's laden with highly toxic gases. Carbon monoxide, hydrogen cyanide, things that lead to rapid incapacitation long before you would even feel the heat. Survivors described this heavy smoke that made breathing impossible, which just confirms this was a chemical asphyxiation event first and a burn hazard second.
That's a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
In this scenario, you don't really die from the heat. You're overcome. You're rendered unconscious by toxic gas in less time than it takes to check your phone.
And that leads directly to the second layer of chaos. Once panic sets in, you have hundreds of people, maybe disoriented by smoke, maybe intoxicated.
Yeah, it's New Year's Eve.
Right. They're all thrust into this fight or flight scenario, and they all rush for the same thing on the way out.
And what did the sources tell us about those escape routes?
The problem was immediate and fatal. Blocked exits. Survivors talked about these bottlenecks where doorways that should have been mandatory, obvious, clear, they were suddenly inaccessible.
Blocked how? Like with stuff?
Could be anything. Stored supplies, maybe decorative barriers for the party, or simply locked. Locked to prevent people from sneaking in or out. But the result was the same, a critical failure of the egress system.
That moment where human panic meets a physical obstruction, that is the definition of a crush hazard. You have maybe a minute of viable air left, it's turning toxic, and your only path out is clogged.
It just demonstrates this paper-thin margin between a vibrant celebratory crowd and total mass panic when those fundamental, often really mundane safety features fail.
And this connects back to you, the listener. You go into a place like this, you assume a certain level of safety is in place, right?
Yep.
Especially in a country like Switzerland.
You do. But this rapid acceleration suggests that everything, from the materials used to the placement of furniture, was working against the occupants the moment that ignition happened. It was an explosive spread, almost like it was designed for failure.
So the systemic disregard for safety. That's what the criminal investigation is focusing on.
Exactly. It forces us to ask, if we connect this to the bigger picture, what were the foundational safety sins that just stacked up so catastrophically?
So the investigation isn't finding one single thing. It's finding 4 critical errors, all working together.
Yeah.
Let's dive into those 4 mistakes, starting with the structural design itself.
Okay.
Mistake number 1, flammable ceiling materials. Experts confirmed that the structural and decorative materials in the bar were highly flammable. And that links directly back to what you said, the visual evidence of flames racing across the ceiling.
This is a classic example of prioritizing aesthetics and probably cost over human life. Fire retardant materials are more expensive. Simple as that.
Right.
So if a venue wants a particular look, maybe certain types of acoustic foam, decorative fabrics, cheap ceiling tiles, and they bypass the regulatory review or use materials not certified for commercial use, you create this incredibly dangerous scenario. The materials became the fuel.
They fed the fire.
They vastly increased the fire load and guaranteed a rapid, what we call a flashover.
Can you explain flashover for the listener?
Sure. Think of it as the point of no return in a fire. As a fire burns in an enclosed space, the heat radiates everywhere and it preheats all the other flammable materials in the room. Flashover is that precise moment when all of those surfaces ignite at the same time.
Oh.
And in this case, that rapid fire spread across the flammable ceiling guaranteed that flashover was reached almost instantly. It turned the entire room into an oven before people could even react.
So that material choice was the fuse. But you still need an ignition source.
Which brings us directly to mistake number 2. Indoor sparklers. This is it's baffling negligence.
In a bar.
In a crowded bar, underground. Sparklers or some other small indoor pyrotechnics were identified as the likely ignition source, or at least a major factor, given their high temperature and, erratic sparks.
So management chose cheap, highly flammable materials and then actively introduced a high-temperature ignition source right into that environment. It's a complete breakdown of foresight.
It shows a deliberate disregard for basic safety protocols, and it's often driven by the entertainment factor. They want a visually exciting moment.
And they prioritize that over a known hazard.
Absolutely. And the venue's location just compounded the danger.
This is mistake number 3, right? The crowded basement design.
Yes. The venue being in a basement, a subterranean space, contributed immensely to the chaos. Basements inherently have fewer, less accessible escape routes than a ground-level floor.
Well, yeah, if a fire's above you, smoke and heat rise, that's naturally the direction you want to escape. But in a basement, everything descends on top of the crowd.
Exactly. Smoke fills the space from the ceiling down, cutting visibility, poisoning the air. And then you have the sheer occupancy of the venue, the crowding, which turned the chaos into a crush hazard, even if the exits hadn't been blocked.
And there are codes for that, right? For how many people can be in a space.
Strict standards. Based on the square footage and the number of available exits, overcrowding just negates any emergency plan you might have.
And that leads directly to the ultimate fatal flaw, the egress system failure. Mistake number 4, limited escape routes. This goes back to the accounts of blocked exits.
This is where the code gets very specific. Codes require not just a certain number of exits, but a mandated width for those exits. It's measured in inches per 100 occupants. If management uses those pathways for storage or stacks chairs there or locks a door,
Which happens all the time.
all the time, it's a common decision to control who comes and goes. But you're essentially sacrificing human life for convenience or profit. The blocked exits ensured that the panic would result in a lethal bottleneck.
What's so fascinating in a grim way is that these weren't isolated issues. This investigation isn't just looking at one bad material or one locked door, it's the combined impact.
It's the design flaws, the management negligence, and the safety code violations all acting in concert.
The tragedy was entirely rooted in human decisions, a disregard for rules that already exist.
Exactly. These weren't minor administrative oversights. These were foundational failures that guaranteed a high body count the second that spark ignited. They bypassed the regulatory process in a way that should have been caught long before New Year's Eve.
And the swift legal response in Switzerland seems to reflect the gravity of that. Swiss prosecutors have launched a criminal investigation.
Centered entirely on negligence and code violations. This is a criminal inquiry. It's designed to find out who was responsible for allowing this systemic safety disregard to happen.
And it goes beyond just this one bar, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. That investigation has already triggered a broader nationwide investigation into fire safety failures across Switzerland. They're using this tragedy as a catalyst to examine their entire regulatory framework, and maybe more importantly, the enforcement.
So were inspectors corrupted, overwhelmed, or just incompetent?
That's the question they're asking. And that national scope is important. It really addresses the assumption a lot of us might have that safety standards in a wealthy, developed nation like Switzerland would automatically be impeccable.
It proves negligence can creep into any system if it's not rigorously enforced.
And that is the core takeaway for you, for the listener. The Crans-Montana tragedy is a stark reminder that regulatory failures in one place often reflect potential negligence in others. And here's where it gets really interesting for the global listener.
Okay.
Fire safety experts are now raising an alarm that extends far beyond Switzerland's borders. They are warning that similar hazards exist in nightlife venues worldwide.
And if we look at this globally, that pattern of 4 failures, flammable decor, indoor flames, overcrowding, and blocked exits, it sounds tragically familiar. Are there historical precedents for this?
Absolutely. The global pattern is unmistakable. Think about the 2003 station nightclub fire in Rhode Island here in the U.S.
Wait, I remember that.
Pyrotechnics ignited highly flammable polyurethane soundproofing foam. It's a material failure exactly like the ceiling in Crans, Montana.
No.
Or the 2015 collective club fire in Bucharest, Romania. Fireworks set off flammable acoustic foam, dozens of deaths, and it was all linked to blocked exits and high-toxicity smoke.
So we're seeing the exact same combination of failures. Flammable material, an indoor spark, and a catastrophic failure to get out. Repeated across continents, across decades.
It strongly suggests these aren't just isolated incidents. They're systemic vulnerabilities, and they're driven by the same economic factors.
What do you mean?
Well, why do venue owners choose cheap, flammable, decorative materials? It saves money. Why do they block exits? To control patrons or to maximize storage space, which maximizes profit. The tragedy is rooted in this economic trade-off where profit margins are prioritized over human safety.
It shifts the issue from a local Swiss tragedy to a universal structural problem in the entertainment industry.
Yes. The experts are basically telling us, if venues are cutting corners on fire-retardant materials, allowing pyrotechnics, and blocking exits in Crans, Montana, what does that imply about oversight in entertainment districts globally?
It raises a really important question. If these avoidable hazards are common everywhere, what does that say about the oversight of the places you visit?
It seems like safety is often secondary, until a catastrophic failure forces regulators to finally act. This global warning is essentially asking patrons to look for the signs of negligence themselves.
So what does this all mean? Our deep dive into the Crans, Montana tragedy. It confirms that a New Year's celebration was cut short not by some inescapable accident, but by a precise combination of failures.
Material choices that guaranteed flashover.
Design issues like a crowded basement and blocked exits.
And the reckless management choice of using indoor pyrotechnics.
It was a failure of structure compounded by a failure of duty.
The tragedy was rooted in avoidable failures that turned clear code violations into a criminal disaster. For you, the next time you step into a crowded entertainment venue, a bar, a concert hall, a restaurant, remember these 4 systemic flaws we identified? Take a moment. Assess your surroundings.
Are the exits clearly marked? Are they unobstructed? Are there enough of them?
Is the ceiling just decorative, or does it look fire-rated? And here's the final thought. Is the burden of awareness now on the patron, on you, to spot these design and management flaws? Or should this tragedy finally force a global reckoning, a demand for immediate and strict enforcement of the basic safety codes that have existed for decades? Something to mull over.
An essential, if sobering, lesson in structural vigilance. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.